The beautifully wrapped box of handmade chocolates arrived on my 65th birthday, a thoughtful gift from my daughter-in-law Celeste. Each piece looked crafted with care, dusted with cocoa powder and arranged in perfect rows. I was genuinely touched by her gesture. But knowing her father Frank lived alone and had such a sweet tooth, I decided to share the joy. The next day, Celeste called cheerfully, asking how I enjoyed them. When I explained I'd given them to her dad, complete silence followed. Through my window, I watched her breath hitch as she sat in her car, her face draining of all color. That phone call ended so abruptly it left me staring at the receiver. Something about Celeste's reaction gnawed at my gut like a splinter working deeper into flesh. I'd known this woman for 8 years, watched her marry my son Marcus, shared countless family dinners where she laughed at my stories and complimented my cooking. Never once had I seen her react with such raw terror. The silence stretched so long, I thought the line had died. Then came a strangled whisper. "Dad ate them already." "Well, sure, honey. Frank loves his sweets, you know that. Finished half the box before I even got home from dropping them off. Said they were the finest chocolates Head ever tasted." I chuckled, but something cold was creeping up my spine. "Celeste, what's wrong? You sound upset." The line went dead. I stood at my kitchen window watching her silver sedan idling in my driveway. Celeste sat motionless behind the wheel, both hands pressed against her mouth like she was holding back a scream. Her shoulders shook with what looked like sobs, but from this distance, I couldn't be certain. After several minutes, she drove away at a speed that would have earned her a ticket on any other street. That was Tuesday afternoon. By Thursday morning, my world tilted off its axis. The call came at 6:47 in the morning, jarring me from dreams of better times. Frank's neighbor, a retired nurse named Dorothy, spoke in clipped, professional tones that immediately set my nerves on edge. "Brayden, I found Frank collapsed in his bathroom. Paramedics are taking him to Regional Medical Center. His symptoms," her voice faltered, "they're unlike anything I've seen in 30 years of nursing." I dressed faster than I had since my army days and drove to the hospital with my heart hammering against my ribs. The emergency department buzzed with controlled chaos, but I found Frank's room easily enough by following the cluster of worried medical staff. Dr. Harrison, a lanky man with prematurely gray hair, intercepted me before I could enter. His expression carried the weight of bad news delivered too many times. "Are you family?" "Close enough." "How is he?" "Honestly, we're puzzled. His symptoms suggest heavy metal poisoning, but the presentation is unusual. Severe gastrointestinal distress, neurological symptoms, kidney function declining rapidly. We're running comprehensive toxicology panels, but results take time." Through the glass partition, I saw Frank hooked to more machines than seemed possible for one human being. His 72-year-old frame looked shrunken against the white sheets, his normally ruddy complexion a sickly yellow-gray. This was the same man who'd helped me rebuild my back deck just last month, working with the steady hands of a lifelong carpenter despite his age. "What did he eat recently? Anything unusual?" My blood turned to ice water. Those chocolates, the ones Celeste had made with such care, the ones that had prompted her terrified reaction when she learned Frank had consumed them instead of me. "Chocolates," I whispered. "He ate handmade chocolates on Tuesday evening." Dr. Harrison's eyebrows shot up. "Do you still have them?" "Some, yes. They're at Frank's house. We need those immediately. And we need to contact whoever made them." As if summoned by our conversation, Celeste burst through the emergency department doors. Her appearance shocked me more than Frank's condition. Dark circles ringed her eyes, her normally perfect blonde hair hung in unwashed tangles, and her clothes looked slept in. She rushed toward us with the desperate energy of someone fleeing invisible demons. "Is he? How is?" She couldn't finish the sentence. Nurse Patricia, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, studied Celeste with professional interest. I'd known Patricia for years through my volunteer work at the hospital, and she possessed an almost supernatural ability to read people. "Are you the one who made the chocolates?" Patricia asked. Celeste nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I made them for Brayden's birthday. I don't understand how Frank could be sick from them. I used the same recipe I always use, the same ingredients." Her protests sounded rehearsed, like lines she'd been practicing. Patricia's expression grew more skeptical by the moment. Well, need a complete list of ingredients and your preparation method, Dr. Harrison said. Also, contact information for where you purchased everything. Of course, anything to help. But Celeste's hands trembled as she fumbled for her phone, and she kept glancing at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. Fear, certainly. Guilt, maybe. But something else lurked beneath those emotions, something that made my skin crawl. The next few hours blurred together in a haze of medical terminology and mounting dread. Blood draws, IV lines, specialists consulting in hushed tones. Frank drifted in and out of consciousness, occasionally gripping my hand with surprising strength. During his lucid moments, he managed to whisper fragments of sentences. Tasted strange, bitter underneath. Tried to call you. Each word hit me like a physical blow. Frank had attempted to reach me Tuesday night, probably when the symptoms first started. It'd been at my weekly poker game with the guys from church, my phone silenced in my jacket pocket. While I'd been laughing and betting nickels, this good man had been suffering alone in his modest apartment. Celeste paced the waiting room like a caged animal, making phone calls that consisted mostly of frantic whispers. I caught fragments. It wasn't supposed to, and he ate them instead. And what do we do now? Each overheard phrase tightened the knot of suspicion growing in my chest. When the initial blood work results arrived around noon, the atmosphere in Frank's room shifted dramatically. Dr. Harrison's expression grew grave as he studied the printouts, consulting with the toxicology team via phone. We're finding some unusual compounds in his system, he told me quietly. Nothing that should be in chocolate, certainly nothing that should be in any food product intended for consumption. What kind of compounds? We're waiting for confirmation from the specialized lab, but preliminary results suggest the presence of organic toxins, potentially plant-based. Plant-based toxins in homemade chocolates. The implications crashed over me like a cold wave. Someone had deliberately poisoned those chocolates. Someone who knew I loved sweets, who knew about my Tuesday evening poker games, who had access to my home and my routines. Someone who wanted me dead. I looked through the window at Celeste sobbing in the hallway, and for the first time in 8 years, I wondered if I really knew my daughter-in-law at all. After securing Dr. Harrison's promise to call me with any changes in Frank's condition, I drove to his apartment with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. The spare key still hung on its hiding spot beneath his back porch wind chimes, exactly where Frank had kept it for the past 5 years. His neighbors often joked that he was too trusting for his own good, leaving keys for friends and maintaining an open-door policy for anyone needing help. The irony of that thought made my stomach lurch. Frank's kitchen told a story I wasn't prepared to read. The chocolate box sat on his small dining table, but something felt wrong about its placement. When Id delivered it Tuesday evening, Id set it squarely in the center of the table, next to Frank's reading glasses and yesterday's newspaper. Now it sat askew, rotated about 30 degrees, with the ribbon retied in a slightly different pattern. Someone had been here after Frank's collapse. I counted the remaining chocolates through the clear plastic insert. 8 pieces remained of the original 24. Frank had mentioned eating half the box, which would have left 12 pieces. 4 chocolates were missing from what should have been there. My phone buzzed with a text from Celeste. Did you find them? Please bring them to the hospital, as soon as possible. So worried about Daddy. The casual tone felt jarring given the circumstances. More importantly, how did she know I'd gone to retrieve the chocolates? I hadn't told her my plans, hadn't spoken to her since her breakdown at the hospital. Unless she'd been watching Frank's apartment. I photographed the box from multiple angles before carefully sealing it in a plastic container I found under Frank's kitchen sink. Every instinct screamed at me to preserve whatever evidence might exist. Though evidence of what, I couldn't yet articulate. The drive back to Regional Medical Center felt like traversing a landscape I no longer recognized. Streets I'd navigated for 30 years seemed foreign, colored by the growing certainty that someone close to me harbored murderous intentions. Dr. Harrison met me in the corridor outside Frank's room, his expression grimmer than before. How quickly can you get those chocolates to our lab? I have them right here. Doctor, what exactly are you testing for? Initially, we ran standard toxicology panels for common poisons. Mercury, lead, arsenic, cyanide, all negative. But Frank's symptom progression suggests something more exotic. He accepted the container with gloved hands. There are certain plant alkaloids that could produce this clinical picture. Ricin, for instance, derived from castor beans. The word ricin hit me like a physical blow. Even a retired auto mechanic like myself knew about ricin from news reports over the years. Terrorist plots, assassination attempts, substances so deadly that microscopic amounts could kill. How long before you have results? Given the urgency, our lab is prioritizing this. I'd expect preliminary findings within 6 hours. Comprehensive analysis by tomorrow morning. 6 hours felt like an eternity, with Frank fighting for his life and questions multiplying in my mind like cancer cells. I found Celeste in the family waiting area, hunched over her phone with an intensity that seemed out of place for someone simply updating relatives about a medical emergency. The moment she spotted me approaching, she quickly ended her call and slipped the phone into her purse. "Did you bring them?" "The chocolates. Just handed them over to the lab." I settled into the uncomfortable plastic chair across from her, studying her face for tells. 30 years of poker had taught me to read micro-expressions, and right now Celeste displayed signs of barely controlled panic. Funny thing, though, some were missing from what Frank said had eaten. Her complexion paled another shade. "Missing? What do you mean?" Frank told me had eaten 12 pieces, but only 8 remained in the box. That leaves 4 unaccounted for. Maybe he miscounted, or ate more than he remembered. When you're enjoying something sweet, it's easy to lose track. Reasonable explanation, but delivered with the practiced smoothness of someone who'd rehearsed it. More concerning was the subtle shift in her posture, the way she angled her body toward the exit as if preparing to flee. "Celeste, where did you buy the ingredients for those chocolates?" "Various places. The chocolate from that gourmet shop downtown, vanilla from the grocery store, other things from specialty food suppliers online." Again, the answer came too quickly, too polished. "I'd like to check your receipt records. Maybe contact the suppliers to see if there were any contamination issues with their products." "Oh." I throw receipts away immediately. "You know how I am about clutter." She laughed, but the sound carried no humor. "Besides, I ordered most items weeks ago. The suppliers probably wouldn't even remember individual orders." Every answer created new questions. Every explanation felt rehearsed. Worse, I was beginning to remember details that hadn't seemed significant at the time but now glowed like warning signs in my memory. 3 weeks ago, Celeste had asked detailed questions about my health insurance beneficiaries. 2 weeks ago, Shed inquired about my will, whether I'd updated it recently. Last week, Shed mentioned how expensive Marcus' car payments had become, how difficult it was making ends meet on his sales commissions, financial pressure, life insurance, inheritance questions, the classic motives for familial murder. My phone rang, startling us both. Detective Sandra Lopez's name appeared on the screen. I'd known Sandra for years through community policing programs. A sharp investigator who'd earned respect throughout our county for solving complex cases. "Brayden, I'm at the hospital." "Doctor, Harrison called us about Frank's case. We need to talk immediately. I'm in the family waiting area with Celeste." "Perfect. Stay put. I'll be right there." Celeste's face went ashen. "Why are the police involved? This was an accident, a contamination issue, or allergic reaction or something." "Frank is dying from apparent poisoning, Celeste. Of course police are involved." She stood abruptly, clutching her purse to her chest. "I should go home, check on Marcus. This is all so overwhelming. Actually, you should stay. Detective Lopez will want to speak with you since you made the chocolates." For just a moment, Celeste's mask slipped completely. The expression that flickered across her features was pure, cold calculation. She was weighing options, considering scenarios, planning her next moves with the methodical precision of someone accustomed to deception. Then the mask snapped back into place, and she was once again the concerned daughter-in-law, overwhelmed by family tragedy. Of course, whatever helps find out what happened to Daddy, but she remained standing, poised for flight, and her eyes kept darting toward the exit signs. Detective Lopez arrived within minutes, her presence immediately commanding the waiting area's attention. She was a woman who exuded competence, from her crisp, professional attire to the way she assessed situations with laser focus. "Mrs. Anderson, I'm Detective Lopez. I understand you prepared the chocolates that Mr. Miller consumed before falling ill. Yes, for my father-in-law's birthday. I can't imagine how they could have made Daddy sick. I used the same recipe I've used dozens of times before. I'll need a detailed statement about your preparation methods, ingredient sources, and timeline. Also, need to examine your kitchen and any remaining ingredients. Celeste's composure cracked slightly. Examine my kitchen? Is that really necessary? I mean, this was obviously some kind of contamination from the suppliers. Mom, Mr. Miller is fighting for his life with symptoms consistent with deliberate poisoning. Until we determine exactly what happened, we're treating this as a potential criminal matter. The words, deliberate poisoning and criminal matter, hung in the air like smoke from an explosion. Celeste swayed slightly, gripping the back of her chair for support. Criminal? But that's impossible. I would never hurt Daddy. I love him like my own father. Detective Lopez's expression remained professionally neutral. But I caught the slight narrowing of her eyes. She'd noticed the same things I had. The too quick answers, the defensive posturing, the emphasis on love and innocence that sounded more like protest than truth. I'm sure this is all very distressing. Right now, our priority is gathering facts to help Mr. Miller and prevent anyone else from being harmed. She turned to me. Mr. Thompson, I understand these chocolates were originally intended for you. Birthday gift from Celeste. I gave them to Frank because he has such a sweet tooth and lives alone. When did you make that decision? Tuesday evening when I delivered them. Spontaneous choice, really. Frank was having a rough day, missing his late wife, and I thought the chocolates might cheer him up. Detective Lopez made notes while Celeste grew increasingly pale. The implication was obvious to everyone in the room. If those chocolates contained poison, Frank was an unintended victim. The real target sat in the chair next to me, celebrating his 65th birthday and completely oblivious to the danger. Until now. Detective Lopez returned the next morning with a manila folder thick enough to contain a novel and an expression that promised revelations I wasn't prepared to hear. Frank's condition had stabilized overnight, but he remained in intensive care, his kidneys struggling to process whatever toxins were systematically destroying his body. The waiting room felt different in daylight, more clinical and unforgiving. Celeste hadn't returned since yesterday's questioning, claiming she needed to care for Marcus, who was allegedly sick with flu symptoms. Convenient timing for an illness. Considering the circumstances, Mr. Thompson, we need to discuss the laboratory results privately. Detective Lopez gestured toward a small conference room typically used for delivering bad news to families. What I'm about to share will be difficult to hear. The preliminary toxicology report confirmed my worst fears and introduced horrors I hadn't imagined. The chocolates contained ricin in concentrations that would have killed me within 72 hours. But the ricin wasn't uniformly distributed throughout the chocolates. It was concentrated in specific pieces, carefully measured to deliver a lethal dose across multiple servings. This wasn't accidental contamination, Detective Lopez explained. Someone with knowledge of ricin extraction and dosing deliberately poisoned those chocolates. The precision suggests careful planning and research. How much research are we talking about? Months, possibly longer. Ricin extraction requires specific knowledge of chemistry and botany. The doses were calculated for your approximate body weight, not Mr. Miller's. That's probably why he survived the initial exposure. She opened the folder and withdrew photographs that made my vision blur. Screenshots of text messages between Marcus and Celeste, dated over the past 4 months. We obtained a warrant for Mrs. Anderson's phone records based on the attempted murder charge. What we found. I'm sorry, Brayden. This is going to devastate you. The messages told a story of calculated evil that shattered everything I thought I knew about my family. Marcus complaining about student loan debt, car payments, credit card bills, Celeste mentioning her expensive tastes, her frustration with their modest lifestyle compared to her wealthy friends. Then came the discussions about my death. March 15th. Dad's got to have at least $2 million in assets. House paid off, retirement accounts, life insurance. March 22nd. We could pay off everything and finally live the way we deserve. April 3rd. How much longer is the old man going to hang around anyway? Hes 65. Not in great health. April 10th. What if we helped speed things along? made it look natural. The messages continued chronologically, documenting their research into untraceable poisons, their discussions of my habits and routines, their careful planning of my murder. They'd studied my medical history, noting my occasional heart palpitations that would provide cover for cardiac symptoms. They'd researched ricin specifically because it could mimic heart attack symptoms in elderly victims. My hands shook so violently I couldn't hold the papers steady. My own son, the child Id, raised alone after his mother's death, had spent months planning my murder with the cold efficiency of a professional assassin. "There's more," Detective Lopez said gently. "We found evidence of earlier attempts. Bank records showed unauthorized access to my accounts over the past 2 months. Small withdrawals, under amounts that would trigger automatic notifications, totaling nearly $8,000. They'd been practicing identity theft while planning my death. Worse still, they'd obtained duplicate keys to my house. Security footage from my neighbor's camera showed Celeste entering my home on multiple occasions when I was away, including last week when I'd been visiting my sister in the next county. What was she doing in my house? Based on additional evidence we've gathered, we believe she was conducting reconnaissance and possibly attempting preliminary poisoning attempts." The room started spinning. "What kind of preliminary attempts? Do you recall being unusually fatigued over the past several weeks? Stomach upset? Dizzy spells you attributed to aging." I thought back to recent weeks, remembering afternoons when exhaustion hit me like a physical weight, mornings when my coffee tasted slightly off, evenings when my vision seemed fuzzy for no apparent reason. "You think she was already poisoning me? We're arranging comprehensive blood work to check for trace amounts of various toxins. Given the sophistication of their planning, it's likely they were building up toxins in your system gradually. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound. These weren't strangers who'd targeted me for financial gain. This was my son, the boy I'd taught to ride a bicycle and throw a baseball, who'd called me every Father's Day without fail. This was my daughter-in-law, who'd shared Christmas dinners at my table and hugged me goodbye after every family gathering. They'd been slowly killing me while smiling to my face. Where are they now? We've had them under surveillance since yesterday. Mr. Anderson is at home, apparently unaware we've uncovered their plan. Mrs. Anderson has been making phone calls to travel agencies. Travel agencies? Booking international flights, one-way tickets to countries without extradition treaties with the United States. They were planning to run, with my money, funded by my death, fleeing to countries where they could live comfortably on the proceeds of patricide." Detective Lopez leaned forward, her expression intensifying. "Brayden, we need your cooperation for the next phase of our investigation. We believe Mrs. Anderson may attempt to accelerate their timeline now that Mr. Miller survived and we're investigating. If she tries to poison you again, or if they attempt to flee, we need to be ready. What do you need me to do?" "Continue your normal routine, but with protective surveillance. We're monitoring all their communications, tracking their movements. If they make any aggressive moves, well, intervene immediately. And if they run, well, arrest them at the airport, the bus station, wherever they go, but we'd prefer to gather additional evidence first, ensure our case is airtight." I understood the logic, but the emotional weight felt crushing, walking through my daily routine while knowing my son wanted me dead, pretending normalcy while wearing a wire to record conversations with potential murderers, maintaining a facade of ignorance while my heart shattered into irreparable pieces. "There's something else you should know," Detective Lopez continued. "The ricin in those chocolates wasn't their first attempt at obtaining deadly substances. Credit card records show purchases of materials that could be used to manufacture other toxins. They've been planning this for much longer than the text messages indicate." She showed me receipts for castor beans ordered online, chemistry equipment purchased from scientific supply companies, and books about toxicology bought from various retailers. The paper trail painted a picture of 2 people who'd devoted months to studying the most effective ways to kill me. "How long do we maintain this charade?" "Not long. We're moving toward arrests within the next 48 hours. We just need them to make one more incriminating move, something that definitively proves intent to commit murder." As I walked back toward Frank's hospital room, I realized that regardless of how this investigation concluded, my life as I'd known it was over. The son I'd loved unconditionally had revealed himself as a stranger capable of unimaginable evil. The family dinners, holiday celebrations, and shared memories had all been contaminated by knowledge of their true feelings toward me. Frank lay unconscious in intensive care, fighting for his life because had-eaten chocolates intended to kill me. The guilt of that realization threatened to destroy what remained of my sanity. But underneath the devastation, another emotion was beginning to surface, something cold and hard and utterly resolved. They wanted me dead for my money? They thought I was just a weak old man who'd die quietly and conveniently? They were about to learn exactly how wrong they'd been about me. Dr. Rebecca Stone, the toxicologist from the state laboratory, arrived at the hospital with test results that transformed my growing suspicion into horrible certainty. Her silver hair was pulled back severely, and she wore the expression of someone who'd seen too many cases of human cruelty disguised as accidental poisoning. Mr. Thompson, I need to discuss some disturbing findings about your own blood work. We sat in the same conference room where Detective Lopez had shown me the text messages, but this time the manila folder contained medical reports with my name at the top, charts and graphs that documented a slow, methodical attempt to end my life. Your blood contains elevated levels of arsenic, consistent with chronic low-level exposure over approximately 8 weeks. The concentrations aren't immediately fatal, but they explain the symptoms you've been experiencing. 8 weeks. I counted backward through my calendar, landing on mid-September when Celeste had started bringing family dinners to my house more frequently. Shed claimed Marcus was working late shifts and she enjoyed cooking for someone who appreciated her efforts. Every Tuesday and Friday evening, Shed arrived with elaborate meals and covered dishes, staying to eat with me and chat about our respective weeks. Those meals had been slowly killing me. How was the arsenic administered? Most likely through food, given the absorption patterns. Small amounts added to meals over time, building up in your system gradually. If you hadn't inadvertently avoided the ricin by giving those chocolates away, you'd have died from the combined effects within days. Dr. Stone showed me comparison charts demonstrating how the arsenic levels would have interacted with ricin poisoning. The slow arsenic buildup was designed to weaken my organs, making the ricin more effective at lower doses. They'd planned everything with scientific precision. Could this have been accidental? Contamination from old pipes or environmental sources? Absolutely not. The arsenic levels are too consistent and too specific. This was deliberate, systematic poisoning. I thought about all those Tuesday and Friday dinners, how Celeste had insisted on serving me personally, how Shed always prepared my plate in the kitchen before bringing it to the dining room. Id attributed her attentiveness to genuine affection for her father-in-law. Instead, Shed been measuring poison into my food like seasoning. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Haven't heard from you since Dad got sick. Everything okay? Want to grab lunch today? The casual tone felt surreal given what I now knew. My son was suggesting lunch while unaware that authorities had uncovered his murder plot, while his intended victim sat reading medical reports documenting his attempted assassination. I showed the message to Dr. Stone, who immediately called Detective Lopez. This could be our opportunity. The detective's voice crackled through the speakerphone. We've been monitoring their communications. They're growing anxious about the investigation timeline and discussing accelerating their plans. What kind of acceleration? Mrs. Anderson purchased additional ricin materials yesterday. She's also been researching faster-acting poisons, substances that would kill within hours rather than days. They weren't going to wait for my arsenic levels to build up further. Something about Frank's survival and the police investigation had triggered panic, pushing them toward immediate action. We need you to agree to that lunch meeting, Detective Lopez continued. Our surveillance team will monitor everything. If he attempts to poison you or makes any threatening moves, well, intervene immediately. The thought of sitting across a restaurant table from Marcus, knowing he wanted me dead, while wearing a concealed recording device felt like something from a nightmare. But Frank was fighting for his life because of chocolates meant for me. I owed it to him and to myself to see this through to the end. What about Celeste? She's at home preparing what appears to be another batch of poisoned food. We have the house under surveillance. If she leaves to meet you anywhere, well, know immediately. 3 hours later, I sat in Mel's Diner, a local restaurant Marcus and I had frequented since his high school years. Wed shared countless meals at these worn Formica tables, discussing his college plans, relationship problems, career goals. The familiar surroundings made the current situation feel even more surreal. Marcus arrived exactly on time, carrying a thermos that immediately triggered my suspicions. Head never brought beverages to restaurants before, always ordering coffee or soda from the menu. Dad, you look terrible. This whole thing with Frank must be really stressing you out. His concern sounded genuine, but I now understood that Marcus was skilled at deception. Had been perfecting his act for months while planning my death. It's been difficult, seeing him in intensive care, knowing those chocolates were meant for me. Yeah, that's incredibly lucky you gave them away. Sometimes things just work out for the best, you know? Lucky. He described his failed murder attempt as luck, as if my survival was merely an inconvenient random event rather than the result of kindness toward an elderly friend. Celeste must feel terrible about the whole situation. She's devastated. Keeps blaming herself even though it's obviously not her fault. He paused, unscrewing the thermos cap. She made your favorite iced tea, by the way. Thought you might enjoy something from home instead of restaurant drinks. My favorite iced tea. The same iced tea Celeste had been serving me every Tuesday and Friday for 2 months. The same beverage that had been delivering arsenic into my system in carefully measured doses. That's thoughtful of her. Marcus poured the tea into a glass, the liquid a familiar amber color with tiny ice chips floating on the surface. It looked exactly like every glass of iced tea Celeste had served me over the past 8 weeks. She wanted to come today, but she's not feeling well. Thinks she might be coming down with the same flu I had earlier this week. Another convenient illness. I wondered if they'd coordinated their stories, or if deception came naturally to both of them. The recording device taped to my chest felt warm against my skin as Marcus slid the glass across the table. Everything about this moment felt choreographed, from his timing, to his casual demeanor, to the way he kept checking his phone for messages. Aren't you going to try it? You always said Celeste made better iced tea than anywhere else. I lifted the glass, noting how Marcus' attention intensified. His eyes focused on my lips with an intensity that would have seemed like concern if I hadn't known better. You know what? I'm actually not very thirsty right now. Maybe I'll save it for later. Disappointment flashed across his features before he caught himself. Come on, just a sip. Celeste will ask if you liked it. The pressure in his voice was unmistakable. He needed me to drink that tea. Needed to complete whatever plan they'd set in motion for today's meeting. Marcus, is there something you want to talk about? You seem unusually focused on my beverage consumption. For just a moment, his mask slipped completely. The expression that crossed his face was cold, calculating, and utterly alien. This wasn't the son he'd raised, the boy who'd cried in my arms after his mother's funeral. This was a stranger who viewed me as an obstacle to overcome, rather than a father to love. Then the familiar smile returned. But now it looked painted on, artificial. Just want you to stay hydrated. You mentioned feeling tired lately. Tired from the arsenic he and Celeste had been feeding me for 2 months. My phone vibrated with a text. Surveillance team in position. If you feel unsafe, signal immediately. You're right. I have been tired. Maybe I should see a doctor about that. Actually, that's probably not necessary. These things usually resolve on their own. The quickness of his response confirmed my suspicions. The last thing they wanted was a doctor discovering arsenic in my bloodstream before their plan reached completion. Still, at my age, it's better to be safe than sorry. Dad, you're being paranoid. You're 65, not 90. A little fatigue is normal. Normal, as if systematic poisoning was just part of the aging process. I picked up the glass again, watching Marcus' face transform with anticipation. Whatever was in that iced tea was meant to be my final meal, the culmination of months of planning and preparation. You know what, son? I think I'll pass on the tea today. My stomach's been a little unsettled since all this stress with Frank. The disappointment in his eyes shifted to something darker. Frustration, anger, and beneath it all, a coldness that made my blood freeze. Dad, I really think you should drink that tea. It wasn't a suggestion anymore. It was an order, delivered with underlying menace that no loving son would ever direct toward his father. Are you feeling all right, Marcus? You seem unusually insistent about my beverage choices. I'm fine. I just think... He stopped mid-sentence, glancing around the restaurant as if suddenly aware of our surroundings. Never mind. Drink it or don't drink it. I don't care. But he did care. The tension radiating from his body, the way his hands clenched and unclenched on the table, The barely controlled frustration in his voice. Everything indicated that this glass of iced tea was crucial to plans I was disrupting simply by staying alive. As we sat in silence, I realized that regardless of what happened next, the son Id loved was gone. The person across from me was a stranger wearing Marcus' face, speaking with Marcus' voice, but motivated by greed and malice that my real son never could have harbored. The most devastating betrayal wasn't that they'd tried to kill me. It was that they'd succeeded in killing the family I thought I had. Detective Lopez's call came at 5:30 the next morning, her voice tight with urgency that sent adrenaline shooting through my system like electric current. They're moving tonight. Plane tickets purchased for 7:45 p.m., one-way flights to Costa Rica. We need to execute the arrests immediately. Costa Rica. No extradition treaty with the United States. They'd planned their escape route as carefully as they'd planned my murder, researching countries where they could live comfortably on stolen inheritance money without fear of prosecution. What about the tea from yesterday? Did your lab analyze it? Ricin concentration high enough to kill you within 12 hours. If you'd consumed even a quarter of that glass, you'd be dead by now. I thought about Marcus' frustration when Id refused to drink, how his casual demeanor had cracked to reveal something calculating and dangerous underneath. My son had sat across from me in our favorite restaurant, urging me to consume poison with the persistence of someone whose financial future depended on my death. Where are they now? Packing. Our surveillance team reports multiple suitcases being loaded into their vehicle. They're also destroying evidence, burning papers in their backyard fire pit, wiping down computers. What about Frank? The pause before her answer told me everything. He took a turn for the worse during the night. The kidney damage from ricin poisoning has progressed to full organ failure. Hes on dialysis, but he was dying because he'd eaten chocolates intended for me. Frank Miller, the kindest man I'd ever known, was paying the ultimate price for my son's greed and my own ignorance about the evil living within my family. I want to be there when you arrest them. Brayden, that's not advisable. These situations can become volatile quickly, especially when suspects realize they're trapped. This is my family, detective. They tried to kill me. They're killing Frank, and they've been stealing from me for months. I need to see this through. After a long pause, she agreed. You'll stay in the surveillance vehicle with one of our officers. Under no circumstances do you approach the suspects or interfere with the arrest procedure. 2 hours later, I sat in an unmarked police van parked 3 houses down from Marcus and Celeste's suburban home, watching through high-tech cameras as my son carried suitcases to their car, with the urgency of criminals fleeing justice. The electronic equipment surrounding me looked like something from a spy movie. All screens and recording devices and communication equipment linking us to arrest teams positioned around the neighborhood. Agent David Carter from the FBI Financial Crimes Unit had joined the operation, bringing federal resources to bear on a case that now involved wire fraud, identity theft, attempted murder, and conspiracy charges that could result in life imprisonment. Your son accessed your bank accounts from 3 different computers over the past 4 months, Agent Carter explained, showing me printouts of transaction records. They were practicing for larger thefts, learning your security procedures and account numbers. After your death, they would have had access to everything. The methodical nature of their crime planning was staggering. They hadn't simply decided to kill me for money. They'd spent months studying my finances, learning my habits, and preparing to assume control of my assets the moment I died. How much did they steal? So far, we can document just over $12,000 in unauthorized withdrawals, but they also applied for credit cards using your information, opened investment accounts in your name, and took out loans against your home equity. My home, the house Id bought 30 years ago, where Id raised Marcus after his mother's death, where Wed celebrated birthdays and holidays, and every milestone of his life. They'd been systematically stealing my home from underneath me while planning my murder. Total financial crimes approach $47,000, Agent Carter continued. That's on top of the attempted murder charges and conspiracy counts. On the surveillance screens, I watched Celeste emerge from their house, carrying what appeared to be a laptop computer and a small fireproof safe. She moved with efficient purpose, someone executing a well-rehearsed escape plan. She's destroying more evidence, one of the surveillance officers noted. Laptop's probably going in the fire pit with the other materials they burned yesterday. Can we stop her? Not yet. We want them to get to the airport before initiating arrests. Less chance of high-speed chases or public endangerment that way. I understood the tactical reasoning, But watching Celeste destroy evidence of their crimes while Frank lay dying felt like a form of torture. She was erasing proof of her systematic attempts to kill me, while the innocent man who'd saved my life fought for his own survival in intensive care. My phone rang with a call from the hospital. "Doctor," Harrison's voice carried news I'd been dreading. "Frank's kidney function has deteriorated to the point where dialysis is no longer effective. His other organs are beginning to fail as well. I'm sorry, Brayden. Without a miracle, he has maybe 24 hours." 24 hours. While Marcus and Celeste packed for Costa Rica, the man who'd saved my life was dying from poison meant for me. "Is he conscious? Can he have visitors?" "Briefly, yes. Has been asking for you?" I told Detective Lopez about Frank's condition, the urgency in my voice making clear that regardless of arrest procedures and tactical considerations, I needed to see him before it was too late. "We're moving the operation timeline up," she decided. "Airport arrests are too risky if Mr. Miller's condition is that critical. Well, take them at their house in 30 minutes. Through the surveillance cameras, I watched Marcus load the last suitcase into their car, while Celeste made phone calls that probably involved confirming their flight reservations and hotel bookings in Costa Rica. They moved with the confidence of people who believed they'd committed the perfect crime, who assumed Frank's death would be attributed to accidental food contamination, and my eventual death would be seen as natural causes in an elderly man. They had no idea that every conversation had been recorded, every financial transaction documented, every piece of evidence preserved despite their attempts to destroy it. "All units, prepare for simultaneous arrest." Detective Lopez's voice crackled through the communication system. "Suspects are approaching their vehicle. We move in 60 seconds." I watched through the cameras as police cars emerged from concealment positions around the neighborhood, converging on Marcus and Celeste's driveway with coordinated precision. Marcus stood frozen beside their car, a suitcase still in his hands, his face cycling through confusion, recognition, and finally pure terror as he realized their perfect plan had collapsed. Celeste tried to run, dropping her purse and sprinting toward their backyard with the desperate energy of someone who understood that capture meant life imprisonment. She made it perhaps 20 yards before being tackled by officers who'd anticipated her escape attempt. The arrest itself took less than 5 minutes, but watching it unfold felt like witnessing the end of everything I'd believed about family, love, and the people closest to me. Marcus and Celeste were handcuffed, read their rights, and loaded into separate police cars, while evidence teams swarmed their house to preserve whatever materials they hadn't managed to destroy. As Marcus' police car passed our surveillance van, he turned toward the window with an expression of such hatred that it physically hurt to see. This wasn't regret or shame or fear. This was pure malice. The look of someone furious that his victim had survived and his perfect plan had failed. In that moment, I realized that the son I'd loved had never really existed. The person I'd raised, the memories I'd treasured, the relationship I'd thought we shared, all of it had been an elaborate performance designed to maintain access to my resources until the moment came to kill me. "It's over, Brayden," Detective Lopez said gently. "They can't hurt you anymore." But as I watched the police cars disappear down the street carrying my son and daughter-in-law toward what would likely be life sentences, I knew it wasn't really over. Frank was still dying, and I still had to find a way to live with the knowledge that the people I'd loved most in the world had spent months planning my death with scientific precision. The arrests were just the beginning of a much longer journey toward understanding how family can become the deadliest enemy of all. The county courthouse buzzer with activity as Marcus and Celeste's arraignment approached, but I sat in Detective Lopez's office reviewing evidence that revealed betrayals deeper than I'd imagined possible. Shed called me in early because overnight questioning had produced revelations that fundamentally changed our understanding of their crime. Celeste broke around 3 in the morning, Detective Lopez began, sliding a thick transcript across her desk. "She's claiming Marcus planned to kill her too, once they reached Costa Rica." The words hit me like physical blows. Kill Celeste? Why would he do that? According to her statement, Marcus had taken out a $500,000 life insurance policy on her 6 months ago. She only discovered it last week when mail arrived at the wrong address, and their neighbor brought it over. I scanned the insurance documents, noting Marcus' forged signature on paperwork Celeste claimed Shed never seen. The policy was substantial enough to fund a comfortable retirement in a country with favorable exchange rates and minimal extradition concerns. She also provided evidence of Marcus' research into untraceable poisons that work quickly in tropical climates. Apparently, had been studying substances that could kill someone within hours while mimicking common tropical illnesses. The methodical nature of Marcus' planning was staggering. He hadn't simply decided to kill me for inheritance money. Had designed a comprehensive murder scheme that would eliminate both his father and his wife, leaving him as the sole beneficiary of multiple life insurance policies and my entire estate. What else has she told you? The ricin poisoning wasn't their first attempt on your life. They've been systematically poisoning your food for over 3 months. Not the 2 months we initially discovered. Detective Lopez showed me credit card records revealing purchases of various toxic substances dating back to early summer. Arsenic, mercury compounds, even small quantities of cyanide ordered through chemical supply companies using forged research credentials. They were experimenting with different poisons to see which ones would be most effective while appearing natural. The arsenic was chosen because it's difficult to detect in routine medical examinations and produces symptoms that mimic common aging-related health issues. I thought about all the times over the past few months when id felt inexplicably tired, when my vision seemed slightly off, when my coordination wasn't quite normal. What id attributed to getting older had actually been the result of carefully calibrated poison doses designed to weaken me gradually. How many times did they try to kill me? Based on Celeste's statement and supporting evidence, at least 12 separate poisoning attempts over 14 weeks. They were building up toxin levels in your system while studying your reactions to determine optimal dosing. 12 attempts. My own son had tried to murder me a dozen times while sitting at my dinner table, sharing family conversations, and accepting my love and financial support. The chocolates were meant to be the final dose, the amount that would push your toxin levels into fatal ranges. When Frank ate them instead, it saved your life but killed an innocent man. Frank's still alive, I corrected, though barely. Id spent the previous evening at his bedside, watching machines keep his organs functioning while his body slowly shut down from ricin poisoning. Yes, but his condition is terminal. The ricin dose was calculated for your body weight and health status. Frank's smaller frame and pre-existing kidney issues made the poisoning much more severe. The guilt was crushing. Frank was dying because id made a spontaneous decision to share what I thought was a thoughtful gift from my daughter-in-law. His death would be the final casualty of my son's greed and my own blindness to the evil living within my family. There's something else, Detective Lopez continued. Marcus isn't cooperating at all. Hez refusing to answer questions, demanding a lawyer, and showing no remorse for any of his actions. What about Celeste? She's providing extensive information about their planning and execution, but only because she realized Marcus intended to kill her too. Without that discovery, she would have maintained her innocence and let Frank die while continuing their original plan. So even Celeste's cooperation was motivated by self-preservation rather than genuine remorse. Neither of them felt actual guilt about their attempts to murder me or their role in Frank's impending death. The courthouse arraignment was scheduled for 2 o'clock, giving me time to visit Frank before facing Marcus and Celeste in a legal setting where their masks would finally be completely removed. Frank's condition had deteriorated noticeably since yesterday. The machines keeping him alive hummed and beeped with mechanical persistence. But his breathing was labored, and his skin had taken on the waxy pallor of approaching death. "Hey there, friend," I whispered, taking his hand in mine. His eyes opened slowly, focusing on my face with effort that seemed to require enormous energy. "Brayden," heard they. "Caught them. Yes, Frank, they're in custody. They can't hurt anyone anymore." "Good." His voice was barely audible. "Those chocolates. Meant for you." "I know. I'm sorry this happened to you because of my family's evil." Frank squeezed my hand with surprising strength. "Not your fault. Saved your life. Glad for that. Even dying from poison meant for me." Frank was expressing gratitude that his suffering had served some purpose. The contrast between his nobility and my family's depravity was stark enough to break what remained of my heart. "Frank, is there anything I can do for you? Anyone you want me to contact?" "Sister Helen, coming from Portland. Tell her. I was happy. Had good friends. Ill tell her. And Frank, thank you. Thank you for saving my life." He smiled, an expression of peace that seemed impossible given his circumstances. Take care of yourself. Don't let this make you bitter. Those words followed me to the courthouse, where I sat in the gallery watching Marcus and Celeste face formal charges for crimes that would likely result in life sentences. Seeing them in orange jumpsuits, handcuffed and flanked by bailiffs, should have provided satisfaction, but instead, I felt only emptiness. Judge Margaret Thompson, a stern woman known for harsh sentences in violent crime cases, read the charges in a voice that carried the weight of absolute legal authority. Marcus Thompson, you're charged with attempted murder in the first degree, conspiracy to commit murder, elder abuse, financial fraud, identity theft, and multiple counts of aggravated poisoning. How do you plead? Not guilty, Marcus replied, his voice steady and defiant. No remorse, no acknowledgement of wrongdoing, no recognition that his actions had destroyed multiple lives and would result in Frank's death. Celeste Anderson, you're charged with attempted murder in the first degree, conspiracy to commit murder, elder abuse, financial fraud, and multiple counts of aggravated poisoning. How do you plead? Guilty, Your Honor. I want to cooperate fully with the prosecution. Judge Thompson set bail at $2 million each, effectively ensuring they would remain in custody until trial. As they were led away, Marcus turned toward the gallery where I sat, his expression containing such hatred that several spectators gasped audibly. In that moment, I realized that my son didn't regret trying to kill me. He regretted failing. Walking out of the courthouse, I understood that regardless of how long Marcus spent in prison, the son Id raised was gone forever. The person being held for attempted murder was a stranger who'd spent months methodically planning my death while pretending to love me. Frank died 3 days later, surrounded by family who'd flown in from across the country to say goodbye. His sister Helen held my hand during his final moments, whispering that Frank had spoken fondly of me in his last conscious hours. He said you were the son he never had, she told me as we watched Frank slip peacefully away. The son he never had, while the son Id actually raised sat in a jail cell awaiting trial for trying to murder me. The irony was devastating, but it also contained the seeds of something that might eventually grow into healing. 6 months after Frank's funeral, I stood in the lobby of the Frank Miller Memorial Foundation, watching volunteers coordinate services for elderly victims of financial abuse. The nonprofit organization had grown beyond my wildest expectations, already helping over 200 families across 3 states recover from crimes similar to what Marcus and Celeste had attempted. The trials had concluded 2 weeks earlier with outcomes that satisfied my need for justice while providing closure I hadn't expected to find. Marcus received life imprisonment without possibility of parole after a jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. His complete lack of remorse, combined with evidence of his planned triple murder, convinced even the most sympathetic jurors that he posed a permanent threat to society. Celeste's cooperation with prosecutors earned her 25 years with possibility of parole after serving 15. Her testimony provided crucial details about their planning and execution that helped investigators understand the full scope of their crimes. More importantly, her willingness to admit guilt and express genuine remorse for Frank's death suggested the possibility of actual rehabilitation. But the legal conclusions were only part of a much larger transformation that had reshaped my understanding of family, trust, and human nature. Dr. Rebecca Stone's final medical report confirmed that I'd been systematically poisoned for nearly 4 months, with toxin levels that would have killed me within weeks if the rice and chocolates had achieved their intended purpose. The slow arsenic buildup had been designed to weaken my immune system and organ function, making the final poisoning attempt more likely to succeed while maintaining plausible deniability about the cause of death. You were approximately 2 weeks away from permanent organ damage that would have been fatal even with immediate medical intervention, Dr. Stone had explained. Frank's survival and your subsequent discovery of the poisoning prevented not just your immediate death, but also long-term health consequences that would have been irreversible. Frank had saved my life twice, once by eating the ricin-laced chocolates, and again by surviving long enough for investigators to uncover the full extent of Marcus and Celeste's crimes. The Foundation's work honoring Frank's memory had introduced me to dozens of families whose stories paralleled my own experience. Adult children stealing from elderly parents, spouses poisoning their partners for life insurance money, caregivers exploiting vulnerable seniors for financial gain. The breadth of elder abuse was staggering, but so was the resilience of survivors who chose to transform their trauma into advocacy for others. Mr. Thompson. A voice interrupted my thoughts. There's someone here who'd like to meet you. I turned to see Helen Miller approaching with a man in his 70s who walked with the careful gait of someone recovering from serious illness. This is George Patterson, Helen said. His daughter tried to poison him last year with antifreeze in his coffee. The Foundation's legal advocacy program helped him recover his stolen savings and get his daughter prosecuted. George extended his hand with a grip that spoke of hard-earned strength. I wanted to thank you for creating this place. After what happened to me, I thought I was alone in the world. Finding other people who'd been through the same thing, who understood the betrayal, it saved my sanity. Stories like George had multiplied throughout the Foundation's first 6 months of operation. WED assisted families in recovering over $1.2 million in stolen assets, helped prosecute 37 cases of elder abuse, and provided counseling services to hundreds of seniors struggling with the emotional aftermath of family betrayal. The work was simultaneously heartbreaking and inspiring, revealing both the depths of human cruelty and the heights of resilience possible when people refuse to let evil define their remaining years. My own healing had been gradual and incomplete, marked by progress and setbacks that reminded me daily how thoroughly Marcus and Celeste's betrayal had damaged my ability to trust. Therapy with Dr. Sarah Collins, a specialist in trauma recovery, had helped me understand that their actions reflected their character, not my failures as a father. You raised a son who chose evil despite receiving love, support, and moral guidance. Dr. Collins had explained. That choice belongs to him, not to you. Your only responsibility now is deciding how to live with the knowledge of who he really is. Living with that knowledge had led me to Frank's sister Helen, who'd become the family id thought I had with Marcus. We shared Sunday dinners, holiday celebrations, and the comfortable companionship of people who'd survived betrayal and chosen to rebuild rather than retreat. Frank would be proud of what you've accomplished, Helen often reminded me. He always said good people find ways to turn pain into purpose. The Foundation's success had also attracted attention from law enforcement agencies seeking better ways to investigate and prosecute elder abuse cases. Detective Lopez now served on our advisory board, helping develop training programs that taught investigators to recognize signs of systematic family abuse that might otherwise be dismissed as natural aging or accidental illness. Your case changed how we approach these investigations, Shed told me recently. The systematic poisoning, the long-term financial exploitation, the careful planning to make murder look natural. We now know what to look for and how to build cases that result in meaningful prosecutions. But perhaps the most unexpected aspect of my recovery had been the relationship that developed with other Foundation clients. WAD become genuine friends. People like Margaret Chen, whose grandson had stolen her life savings through forged power of attorney documents. Like Robert Washington, whose son had been slowly poisoning him with insulin injections that mimicked diabetic episodes. These relationships had taught me that family isn't defined by genetics or legal documents, but by loyalty, respect, and genuine care. The people gathered around my dinner table each Sunday evening had earned their places through consistent kindness rather than accidental birth into specific families. The irony. I often reflected to Dr. Collins is that losing my biological family led me to discover what real family actually looks like. Helen had moved to town 6 months after Frank's death, settling into a small house 3 blocks from mine. WED developed a routine of daily phone calls, shared grocery shopping trips, and collaborative cooking projects that filled both our homes with the warmth I'd thought was lost forever. Frank always worried about me living alone in Portland, Shed confided. He'd be happy to know we're taking care of each other. Taking care of each other. The concept that had been so foreign to Marcus and Celeste had become the cornerstone of my rebuilt life. The Foundation's first annual fundraising dinner was scheduled for next month, with speakers including federal prosecutors, elder abuse investigators, and survivors whose stories would demonstrate both the scope of the problem and the possibility of recovery. We expected over 300 attendees, including family members seeking to understand warning signs of elder abuse and professionals learning to provide better support services. You've created something remarkable, Dr. Collins observed during our most recent session. A year ago, you were the victim of systematic attempted murder. Today, You're leading a movement that's protecting hundreds of other potential victims. The transformation hadn't been easy or quick. There were still nights when I woke up wondering if I could have recognized Marcus' true nature earlier. Days when the betrayal felt as fresh and devastating as during those first horrible revelations. But those moments were balanced by increasing periods of peace, purpose, and genuine happiness. Standing in the foundation lobby, watching volunteers coordinate services that would protect other families from experiencing what Id endured, I realized that Frank's death had not been meaningless. His sacrifice had exposed evil that would have eventually destroyed other innocent people, and his memory now served as protection for vulnerable seniors across multiple states. The notification bell chimed as the foundation's front door opened, admitting an elderly woman accompanied by a younger man who radiated the nervousness of someone seeking help with a difficult situation. "Excuse me," the woman said tentatively. "I think my nephew might be stealing from me, and I don't know what to do." I approached them with the calm confidence that had developed through months of helping families navigate similar crises. "You've come to the right place. We're here to help, and you're not alone." As I led them toward our consultation room, I thought about Frank's final words encouraging me not to become bitter. Had been right, of course. Bitterness would have made me a victim twice over, once from Marcus and Celeste's crimes, and again from my own response to their betrayal. Instead, their evil had been transformed into a force for protection and healing that would outlive all of us. Walking past Frank's memorial photograph in the lobby, I whispered the same words Id spoken at his funeral. "Thank you for saving my life, my friend. I hope I'm using it well." The work continued. One family at a time, one recovered dollar at a time, one prosecution at a time. Marcus and Celeste had intended to destroy me for money that would have funded their selfish pleasures. Instead, their failed murder attempt had created resources that would protect countless other families from experiencing similar betrayals. In the end, evil had been transformed into good, death into life, and betrayal into a legacy of protection that would honor Frank's memory for generations to come. That evening, as I prepared dinner for Helen and our Sunday gathering of chosen family, I reflected on the question that had haunted me throughout this entire ordeal. How do you continue trusting after discovering that the people closest to you are capable of unspeakable evil? The answer, Id learned, wasn't to stop trusting entirely. It was to understand that trust, like love, is earned through consistent actions rather than assumed through biological relationships or legal arrangements. The people sharing my table tonight had proven their loyalty through months of mutual support, honest communication, and genuine care. They were my real family, the family Id discovered by losing the one Id thought I had. As Helen arrived with her famous apple pie and George Patterson followed with his contribution of homemade bread, I realized that despite everything Marcus and Celeste had done to me, I was happier now than I'd been in years. True family, Id learned, isn't about blood. It's about people who choose to love and support each other through both triumph and tragedy. And sometimes, life's greatest betrayals lead us to discover relationships that heal and restore our faith in the fundamental goodness that still exists in the world. Before we share our meal tonight, I want to ask you something. Have you ever experienced betrayal from someone you trusted completely? How did you rebuild your life afterward? And what did the experience teach you about the difference between real family and the people who just happen to share your DNA? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might help someone else who's struggling with similar pain. If this story resonated with you, please like this post and subscribe for more true stories about overcoming family betrayal and finding healing. And if you know someone who might benefit from hearing Frank's story and the foundation we built in his memory, please share this with them. Sometimes the most powerful healing happens when we realize we're not alone in our experiences. Thank you for listening to this difficult but ultimately hopeful story. May we all find the courage to transform our pain into purpose, and may we never stop believing in the possibility of genuine love and loyalty, even after experiencing the deepest betrayals. Take care of yourselves, and remember, your real family consists of the people who choose to love and protect you, regardless of whether you share their last name.